Good morning. Hello and welcome to Sonic Science, understanding your brain on sound. For those of you who I haven't met before, my name is Ivan Pehar, head of Spotify Canada. There's something magical about sound. The wonder of hearing a favorite song for the first time, the gripping climax of a riveting podcast, the hypnotic hum of white noise. All these experiences create an emotional connection in our body that's frankly difficult to describe. But the unique power of sound actually can be explained with science, of course. Spotify partnered with the research team at NeuroInsight, a leading firm in the field of cognitive research, to break down why sound, yes, sound, and specifically digital audio had such an impact on us. For our playlist today, we'll walk you through the new research on the power of audio and sonic science. Then, a fireside chat with Samrat Saran, head of client solutions at NeuroInsight, who conducted the research, and we'll close with a performance by Rina Sawayama. With that, let's kick it off. I'd like to welcome Marian to the virtual stage.
Thank you, Ivan. Thank you so much. And thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Very, very excited to take you through our latest research on the power of audio, sonic science. So we're going to talk about brain, a very, very light topic for a Thursday morning, right? So we'll be covering 4 topics. We'll start by sharing insights on the impact audio has on our subconscious and why our brain interprets sounds and how it interprets sounds. Then we'll explain the impact of digital audio and why it provides a more engaging experience to listeners. After that, we'll show that, how that engagement reflects on the experience our users have on Spotify. And lastly, we'll explain, what that means for all of you and really how to apply this concept to measure the success of audio ads in general and on Spotify specifically. So hopefully by now you can all agree with me, at least some of you, when I say that there's something special about audio, right? I mean, Ivan just said that it sometimes feels like magic that you can't really explain. Think about every time you hear your favorite song or the joyful musical intro of a comedy podcast that you love so much, and it's gonna tell you right away that you're in for a good time. Or even just the calming and relaxing sounds of nature, right? I mean, audio is about immersion. It has the unique ability to get inside you, and it really helps you experience a situation more deeply. It allows you to immerse yourself in an experience that very few other media formats today really are providing, right? And it's basically down to the power of audio. I mean, think about, how important it is to us humans. Audio through speech and music is really fueling 2 of the most important aspects of what it is to be human. One, it really connects us to the thoughts and feelings of others so we can understand everyone. And also it connects us to the feelings and patterns of our communities. It really creates a sense of belonging. So audio is all about emotions and connections. So it's really as if, audio had some kind of magical powers, right? But it has also so many other benefits. So we ask our research participants about all of these benefits, when it comes to listening to music and podcasts. And their answers are really proving what we already knew, obviously, here at Spotify. Listening is indeed a very immersive experience. It's super powerful. I mean, really look at that. 79% of our participants agree that music helped them focus on the task they are doing. 96% told us that, music lifts their mood. So music is really something very powerful. And today, I mean, there's so many other different audio formats, right? I mean, we can listen to so many things. And this connection is not just limited to music now. Podcasts have become increasingly important in people's life. I mean, it's a great way to get news, entertainment, education, or even just hear from different perspectives and diverse voices. So obviously, it's something that we always hear from all the research we do at Spotify. I mean, it's something that keeps coming back. Audio is really used for so many reasons throughout the day. It's one of our best companions. So we know that, audio has a very distinct impact, on our audience. I mean, it's something that I think we can all agree on, but we were really curious to know why. So as an audio platform, it was really important to us to really understand the kind of impact sound has on our subconscious, but also what it means to advertisers and marketers. So we couldn't really answer these questions, ourselves, obviously. So we partner with the research team at NeuroInsight, which is a leading firm in the field of cognitive research. So together we looked at why audio, specifically digital audio, has such a distinct impact on using the largest ever study of its type. So we had over 600 participants. We studied both music and podcast. And obviously we also wanted to look at the impact of Spotify and understand the strength of the platform against terrestrial audio, video, digital streaming, and social media platform. So the research leverages NeuroInsight's proprietary technology. You don't have to remember that, but just so you know, their technology is called steady state topography, and it's really helping us measuring, neural processing speed at the scalp. So basically, we put caps on our participants' scalp, and we're measuring their brain activity. Thanks to that, and thanks to all the data we got, we were able to build a second-by-second picture of the brain activity, which is what you're seeing on your screen right now. And the results we got are really providing the most comprehensive analysis of the impact of digital audio on our subconscious. Okay, before we dive into the results, we're going to take a step back to just understand how sound works on our brain, right? Hopefully after that, you feel like you got a crash course in neuroscience. Okay, so conventional wisdom suggests that the experience of listening to audio is taking place in the right hemisphere of the brain. This is where our past memories, really are engaged. It's very distinct from the language functions, which are on the left side. But recent advances in neuroscience shows us that sound actually impacts us through every key center of the brain. It affects emotion, memory, engagement. So really listening is like high intensity training for your brain. So on your screen is a very simplified and super cool map of our brain, right? Just to give you a better understanding of how all the different areas work. Okay, so you have engagement. Engagement is the ability to create personal relevance. Can I relate to what I'm experiencing? Does it fulfill my needs? You have emotional intensity. So this is where, all emotions are created, right? It's about the strength of emotions. So the stronger the emotional impact, the more we feel in that moment. You have long-term memory for global features. So this is where we build the larger narrative. We're actually associating images to our experience and our surrounding. And it's also where we activate past memories. And then you have long-term memory for details. So this is where we're going to imprint new memories. And these new memories will act as a guide when we need to make decisions in our life. So that part of the brain is very important because it really activates decision making. We're going to make new memories, we're going to store that information, and then we're going to use it later on. Okay, now I hope you feel a bit better about all the brain and how that works. So I have a better understanding. So let's just go back to the stats we've seen, a few slides ago, because these stats are self-reported, right? I mean, we just ask a respondent through a survey. But the beauty of it is that now you can actually have, there's a neuro process behind all of these self-reported. For instance, when we say that music, helps us focus on the task we are doing, it is because it does improve focus and problem solving. Music lifts our mood because it really enables, the processing of all our emotions. So it really makes it easier for us now to understand the reasons listeners love audio so much. Okay, so we've seen how powerful audio is, but we also looked at a lot of different things, and we leveraged NeuroInsight's data and everything they've done so far. And we've seen that radio does not lead to a very strong neural response. So why, if audio is so powerful, why doesn't radio perform that well? So here you can see a comparison between how different areas of the brains are activated when people are listening to radio versus when they are consuming other media. So these are all the areas we've seen before: engagement, memory, emotion. So the numbers here are just showing the level of activity happening in all the different centers. And notice how radio underperforms in all these key metrics. And that happens actually because radio is a pretty passive experience, right? I mean, it's rarely personalized. And when you think about it, that's not how we should be consuming audio, right? I mean, specifically today, I mean, audio is a very active experience. Think about all the cardio our brain does when listening to something. And it's also a very personal experience. I mean, think about mixtapes and CDs and even like playlists today. It's, you know, all of these content containing just our very own mixes based on our taste and interest. And that's pretty much what digital audio today is bringing to our culture. I mean, neuroinsights technology is showing that the listening experience for digital audio is significantly elevating all the metrics compared to audio. It leads to higher memorability, higher engagement, higher emotional intensity. Here you see all these key metrics. We've seen that digital audio is really improving the experience by over 20%. So it's, you know, the scientific proof that digital audio completely changed the way we're experiencing the former. Because audio is not just about listening to other people's content, right? Like radio, for instance. You know that today entire subcultures have been developing around recording and exchanging audio content that have been, you know, personally chosen and highly curated. So really today, digital audio is providing what radio has been missing all this time: personalization and interactivity. So we really believe that the boost we're seeing, you know, with digital audio is directly tied to the fact that it does provide personalization and interactivity. I mean, unlike radio, digital audio really lets people tailor what they're hearing. So it really connects directly to their specific interest and the moment they're in. Digital audio also connects all our users and ourselves, you know, to the breadth and scale of the world music and taste. And really, it gives us universal access to everything. Okay, so why are interactivity and personalization so important to the user experience? Well, they are key, especially when you look at engagement with any platform in general and any type of media and content. Neuroinsight shows us that the ability to choose content that you're going to consume is going to increase your engagement with the platform by 18%. Historically, through all the past research that Neuroinsight has done, they've seen that the act of selection can actually be a bigger contributor to engagement with the platform than the content itself. So just the fact that you're able to pick and choose what you want to consume is going to drive the engagement you have with the platform and the content. And when it comes to the digital audio experience, and especially when it comes to personalization and interactivity, well, Spotify is one of the leaders today, right? I mean, it's not that I just don't want to just give us a pat on the back, but, you know, Spotify is really trying to provide an experience that is highly curated. And we're going to see that in the next few slides. Listening on Spotify is taking the engagement we just saw to the next level because of the deeper personalization it provides. So in our research, we found that the power of digital audio is amplified even further on Spotify. When Neuroinsight measured the brain activity of users listening to different types of audio, music, or podcasts, it was really clear that Spotify is providing the most engaging audio experience to listeners today. Here you can see how Spotify overperforms in all the key metrics we've seen before, surpassing both digital audio and radio. And especially on engagement, here you can see how Spotify performs 34% better than radio and 9% better than digital audio. So when we asked the research team from Neuroinsights, you know, why they were seeing this lift for Spotify, what they told us that they attributed this boost to the fact that Spotify has always been prioritizing creating a very unmatched experience. Again, we saw that before. Interactivity and personalization today are key to driving engagement. And these are a core, you know, to what Spotify is trying to create as an experience. But when it comes to engagement, again, you know, this interactivity and personalization aspect of an experience or a platform are key. And for Spotify, these features are actually lifting the engagement, not just about other audio formats. We're actually seeing that, you know, the Spotify experience is driving higher engagement than TV, digital video, and social media as well. So that's a testament to the power of audio, but also how a deeply personalized platform like Spotify, for instance, can create a more engaging experience than watching TV, you know, when you're on your couch or just passively scrolling through social media feeds. And into this very crowded media landscape, and I know you can all agree that it's very hard to break through and have a deep engagement with consumers. Okay, so what does it mean for advertisers and marketers like yourself, right? I mean, it means a lot. So there's actually a way of measuring how successful ads can be when creating a connection with listeners. So when the content is engaging, there's a higher chance that it will transfer, that engagement will be transferred from the content to the ad. So it's going to drive high engagement, and also driving high engagement obviously is the first step toward very successful and effective advertising, because high engagement is going to lead to ad memorability and brand breakthrough. And these are two processes that are happening on the left side on the brain. Remember the brain, the left side is where we're creating new memories. And that's actually where we're going to store that memories, and we're going to use that later on when we need to make a purchase decision. So just a quick note, ad memorability is basically about remembering the ad, and brand breakthrough is about remembering the actual brand, but most importantly is actually about storing that information in your brain to use it later. And our research is actually showing that 93% of the brain's engagement with the content on Spotify is transferred directly to the ad. So that means when our users are listening to ads, they are almost as engaged as they are when they're listening to the content, either music or podcast. And as a result, we're seeing that transfer to ads, we're going to see 40% more ad engagement on Spotify when compared to all other media, 8% more ad memorability, but most importantly, 19% higher brand breakthrough. What's very interesting is that our research shows that ad performance on Spotify is driven by music and podcasts equally. Both formats achieve 90% higher brand breakthrough than a norm score. Okay, before I invite Ivan back on our virtual stage, just wanted to share a short summary of the key insights from everything we've seen so far. So digital audio enables a more engaging experience because of the interactivity and personalization it provides. We've seen that Spotify is providing a very engaging audio experience to listeners to this because it is it's actually putting the emphasis on personalization and interactivity. And then we're seeing the high transference of engagement from the content to the ads on Spotify, which is 93%. It's going to generate higher brand breakthrough than all other media. Okay, now the fun stuff. Let's see how you can leverage the power of audio on Spotify. Ivan, the stage is yours now.
Thanks, Marianne. I appreciate you taking the time to walk us through the research and the insights. For everyone on the webinar here today, if you have any questions, please drop them in the chat. I see a few questions already up here. So over the course of the next few minutes, drop any questions in the chat and we'll address them during the fireside chat. So now we've heard about how Spotify listeners truly are the most engaging listeners on earth. I'm going to share a few ways that brands can activate on these insights that Marianne walked us through. First, I'd like to share that earlier this week, we shared our Q3 results, and a few of the key findings are here. First, we're building the world's #1 audio network, and advertising is at its core. As of Q3 this year, Spotify now has 380 million monthly active users around the world, which is 19% year-over-year increase. And you're all wondering, 220 million of those users are ad-supported users, which also grew 19% year-over-year. Our advertising reach is bigger and better than it's ever been, and it's growing fast. We're making a ton of investments, most importantly, outside of Canada, outside of the US, investing in areas like Europe, Australia, and Canada. So how do we activate on these findings? The Spotify Audience Network, for those of you that were back with us in July when we made this announcement, the Spotify Audience Network is a two-sided marketplace with podcast publishers and creators on one side, and on the other side, advertisers. The whole mission here is connecting millions of advertisers with billions of podcast listeners. As I described on the last slide, the Spotify Audience Network is an audio-first marketplace. It offers audience-based buying across a network of podcasts. On the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see the Spotify Audience Network today includes podcasts from our 4 studios: Spotify Studios, The Ringer, Gimlet, and Parcast, as well as third-party podcast publishers like Viacom CBS, The Wall Street Journal, and Vox, with many more Canadian publishers coming on board. With the Spotify Audience Network, we're providing advertisers with a more scalable podcast buying option, allowing them to scale their reach beyond classic title-by-title podcasts, but allowing advertisers to use audience-based targeting tools, demographic targeting, geographic, behavioral, as well as custom audience match. All of this delivered in a highly engaging environment, both on and off Spotify. And there's more to this. We're announcing a few blockbuster shows coming in early next year. And the first one launching in early 2020 is Batman Unburied. This is when we first meet Bruce and unravel the mystery of who Bruce Wayne really is. We'll also see a different side of him, frankly, an ordinary citizen. So stay tuned for more to come on Batman Unburied. Our content slate for 2022 is also expanding, and working with our editorial and marketing teams, we're going to go big with 2 key franchises launching next year. Radar, the playlist franchise that deepens the connection between new artists and their audiences around the world. For brands, this fuels discovery and cross-cultural connections, as well as Singles, the playlist franchise that's home to exclusive recordings and unexpected covers. For brands that encourage creators of all kinds to express themselves in new ways. So I know we've covered a lot today, and I thank you for your time. We're most excited about how all of these pieces of the puzzle are starting to fit together to make Spotify the most impactful for your clients. First, following the results of the Sonic Science Report, we see that Spotify provides the most engaging audio experience for consumers, which allows it to be the strongest platform for brand breakthrough. This, coupled with new product innovations and a fresh brand opportunity in music, it allows podcasts and users across the entire Spotify ecosystem that really allows you and your brand truly to have all ears on you. So with that, I'd like to segue to the next portion of this morning. I'd like to welcome Samrat to the virtual stage. Hey, Samrat, good morning.
Good morning, Ivan. How are you? And thank you for having me.
Excellent. Thanks for joining us. And quite frankly, thanks for conducting the research. As we kick it off, if you could just introduce yourself and share a few things about who Samrat is.
Sure. So first of all, my name is Samrat. I'm the head of client solutions for Neuro Insight. I joined the company about a year and a half ago, but that is only a part of the story. 5 years ago, I met Neuro Insight at a conference, and I was struggling with the dilemma that most marketers struggle. I was working for one of the biggest beverage companies in the world. And the idea that brands and brand stories have become more a function of interruption versus relevance had started to play on me. And what I mean by that is we've sort of built these structures in place where we come in and we create a campaign strategy that is very specific towards TV. We have activations for some of the other media platforms, and we do a couple of experiential plays. And at the end of it, depending on performance, we post-rationalize what works, what doesn't work. But I believe that brands had a much more important and a much more poignant role to play. But I just did not know how I could get consumers to actually tell me what they actually thought. And that's when I met Neuro Insight at a conference. And one line just opened my eyes. 90% of our decision-making happens in the subconscious. So why are we trying to measure anything else? I have used Neuro Insight for over 5 years on my Super Bowl campaigns, on my brand launch campaigns, on huge equity campaigns across different formats. And a year and a half ago, just before COVID struck, I said, I actually see a very different path for marketing if we can make this bigger. And that's when I jumped on. And a few months later, I was working with Mario and John on this wonderful project.
So Samrat, if I could, before we jump into the research, if I could just ask you from your perspective, being a brand marketer and advertiser, this cross section between media habits and time spent has shifted dramatically over the years, and most recently during COVID. So how do you sort of, for the brand marketers on the call here, from your previous experience, what's your recommendation to them in terms of thinking about consumption and time spent versus traditional ways that media would be planned?
I think there's a big discrepancy between time spent on a media platform versus and consumed and media consumed versus where brands are actually talking to people. I don't know how much of it is driven by just having models that can measure and then we can get ROIs and we can put financial results behind, and how much of it is really old habits that just haven't died hard or have taken too hard to die. But the truth is, our media landscape is no longer what it was even 5 years ago. It is fragmented. We are listening passively to music much more. We are consuming media on a subconscious basis much more versus actively making time out and trying to watch something. Yes, there are definitely binge watching seasons that we get into, but as brands, even today, we still think about advertising as, let me just go ahead and advertise on TV because I know that that's always worked. The truth is, we are in a paradigm of where can I interrupt a user as opposed to where can I integrate into a user's life. And that is why I feel like advertisers should now start to pay attention to where people are actually on in terms of media, and then start developing strategies to how are we actually going to talk to them.
If I could, Samrat, build on that comment you made, the missing element here is creative, right? So if we understand we're providing a user with a more enriched experience from a brand perspective, how does creative play into that? We've all heard the story of you start with a 30-second spot and you start to slice and dice it around for other platforms. Where is that cross section as well?
It's a great question. And Ivan, you know this as well as I do, brand campaign strategies are getting launched, creative ideas get presented, they get presented in the form of a 30-second or 60-second spot. And then we have in the back pages, this is what we're going to do for X media type, X media type, X media type. But let's shift that paradigm for a second and think of it. We are not advertising, we are telling stories about our brand. And when you're telling stories about a brand, context has a huge role to play. What platform, what is the mood the consumer is going to be in? How do I want to talk about my brand? And that means specific creative strategies for each one of those platforms. Audio, given the strength of its immersive power, given the connection that people have when they're listening to audio, you don't listen to audio to understand the world as much as you do to understand yourself. When you're feeling low or when you're feeling happy, you listen to a certain kind of music. When you want to focus, you listen to a certain kind of music. When you want energy, you could listen to a certain kind of music. That is because you want to feel and elevate that feeling within yourself. And imagine the power that a brand has at that moment to be part of that story and be part of that experience. And if you were to think of it from that lens, it will be a very different experience for you and your brand with the consumer versus just putting in hey, buy me now.
So Samrat, let me jump into the research that you conducted here, and building on that, where you mentioned, how we feel when we listen to audio, whether it's music or podcasts. If we take this from a brand perspective, and let's say you're an athletic wear company, and generally your customers are out doing exercise. They might be going for a run, doing yoga. And as you're listening to audio during those experiences, what happens in the brain? What starts to fire? How does it make us feel better?
So the basic physics of it, sound goes into our ears. It starts to break up into different pieces. The timbre, the pitch, the beats, all of that. And then it gets reconstructed and it starts to activate the different parts of the brain. Emotion, memories, engagement that Marion was talking about. But what it also does is it starts to put our neural rhythms in sync with the music or with the audio, which is why when you are working out and you're doing a cardio workout, you want a music that will keep to the beat that you want to run at. Why? Because that music is actually helping your body get into rhythm. When you're doing powerlifting, it's a very different kind of music. When you're walking, it could be a podcast because you want a very gentle experience that feels more like a conversation. This is what audio can do, and this is where the user is self-selecting. So when you think about audio and the audio experience, you are really thinking about what you really have to imagine is that you are putting people in a mindset and a mind space that is impacting not just adrenaline or serotonin or dopamine production. It is putting people in a rhythm. And as advertisers, if you can sync with that rhythm, you are creating a very effective story that consumers will want to listen to.
So Samrat, on that point, as you conducted the research, were there any, key findings that came out or even things that interested you or surprised you as you went through this research, both in your current role as well as, some of the research you might have done in the past, being a brand marketer?
So I think one, hands off to the Spotify team, John Gibbs, Marion, Alex. The scale at which we did this study is unprecedented. We basically looked at over 600 folks studying different genres of music, studying different types of podcasts. And we were looking at every single aspect of audio in a detail and with fidelity that typically, folks don't usually do. And we were studying it with the best technology that's out there for when it comes to neuroanalysis. I knew Spotify is a great platform. I'm a Spotify user. I use it very frequently, but I did not expect the results to come out the way that they did. I did not expect engagement with the platform to be as high as we were seeing it. And we had to double check the results. We were like, this can't be true because it just feels too good. But they were. We didn't expect audio to be more engaging than social media because audio tends to be, or social media tends to be something that's very visual, very fast, very quick bursts that tends to peak engagement. But then when we dive deeper into the power of audio and what audio was actually doing in the brain, it started to make intuitive sense. When you are choosing playlists that you want to listen to, you're creating a sense of engagement. When you're trying to elevate a mood and you're listening to audio, it creates a sense of engagement. And a platform that can create that level of engagement basically starts to float through towards ads, towards ad memorability, and in essence creates an experience that people want to continue and do for a longer period of time. So those to me were some of the biggest surprise findings that we found, because you would think that most audio platforms would activate pretty much on the same at par, but with Spotify we were seeing a significant difference. And then looking deeper into the brand, looking deeper into how it personalizes, and looking into the other pieces that Spotify does in terms of being able to see how you've evolved as a listener over time, or sharing that with other friends, that creates a much more holistic experience that goes beyond just the audio.
There's a few questions in the chat here that I'd like to bring forward, and I'll bundle a few of them together because they have a common theme, and it speaks to Spotify versus other mediums, and why is there such a big discrepancy, or an elevated lift that we see in Spotify? What we see internally is the personalization. We generally hear from friends, clients, parents who say, "Wow, how does Spotify know that I want to listen to this next song?" So I think from our lens, we see that personalization, that level of engagement, the lean in factor that happens by just overall personalization. Is there anything else, Samrat, from your view, when you think about Spotify or audio overall versus all other mediums?
There are, I think, along with personalization is the brand. So when we engage with anything in our lives, our family, our friends, brands that we know, we are starting not from a zero playing field. We're actually starting from a base that we have built with this particular entity, which is why when you see your mother, your father, you start from a place of love. When it's a brand that you've grown up with, you start from a place of nostalgia. That is basically your global memory centers activating and basically saying, this is something that could be a good experience. Spotify as a brand has built itself up with that sort of level of respect, trust, authenticity. And that gives it an edge, which is why global memory function is so much higher. The second part is, to your point, the personalization. Every time people listen to something, actually, there was an experiment done a few years ago where they try to make people who were sad happy by giving them happy music. It didn't work. When you're sad, you want to listen to sad music. And the reason for that is you want for people to empathize with you. You want to know that there was somebody else who's feeling this exact same thing and that they got over it, and that gives you hope to get over. Which is why personalization is so important, because when you're in the mood for a certain kind of music and more music keeps feeding into that, it basically continues to elevate and enhance your mood. And that creates the experience, makes the experience more engaging. It makes it live longer, and it continues to build those memories of, this is something that when I go to, I always know I'll have a great experience with.
So Samrat, another question.
Sure.
Sorry, continue. Go on.
No, but so that's great for Spotify. But I think as a brand marketer, the question would always be, why is this important to me? Because context influences content. And when I mean context, I mean Spotify. When I mean content, I mean brand advertisers. If you're coming in from a place which has a really good context, your content can see a lift of up to 20%. The same ad on a certain platform versus Spotify could actually see a significant boost just because of the brand authenticity and the features that Spotify brings.
So if I hear that correctly, as a user who opens their phone, taps the Spotify app, they're already in a different mindset because they know what they're going to experience. They know how it's going to make them feel. And then any brand that's tied to that experience has a halo effect based on that initial feeling a user has opening the Spotify app. Is that fair?
Absolutely. You got it right.
Wow. I want to ask, we have a few more minutes here. It's about a couple of questions. I wanted to jump on and ask about Gen Z and millennials. And, they have a different experience with, just overall media. And I see it at home with my daughters and how they interact with different platforms and time spent. Is there anything through either this research or other research you've done that just unpacks how Gen Z and millennials interact with either audio or just media overall?
So one thing that in this study, we were looking at, the population as a mix of Gen Zs and millennials, we have noticed certain trends. One I will speak to is a much broader one. The way that we look at the world is brands can roughly be divided into 4 categories. One, these are innovative brands. They tend to be leading culture. They tend to be at the cutting edge. They provide things that other brands don't. and people partake in those brands because of that newness and the changes that they bring in. Then there are the popular brands that everyone's using, and I am using this brand because I am part of that group. Then there are dependable brands that I use just because that's comfortable for me. And then there are brands that are not part of mainstream culture that tend to be alternative brands that people have subcultures against. With every generation, what once was popular starts to go into that dependability phase. What once was innovative starts to move towards popularity and then starts to move towards the other side of the spectrum. And if you haven't figured it out yet, brands that are innovative and popular tend to grow share of usership and consumption. Brands that tend to be dependable start to lose usership before they go into the alternate side. Gen Z and millennials specifically are always on the search for what is new and what is innovative. It is every generation defines its own set of brands. And what we are seeing with Gen Zers right now is Spotify is at the cutting edge, and especially with millennials, Spotify is in the cutting edge of what it means to be an audio platform. So that's one, from an overall brand perspective. The second piece to this is the amount of visual stimulation that is happening within society today. Audio is providing that escape, which allows people to still focus on what they want to do, but continue to be entertained, informed, or feel connected. And because audio is entertainment without disruption, with Gen Z and millennials, it's picking up in a much bigger way than I would say it did in the past.
So as we get to just one more question before we move on to the last segment and a special performance we have. First, I'd like to ask everyone to, we're gonna pop a quick poll with a quick survey question just to help us make these sessions more valuable moving forward. So you'll see that pop up on the screen. Please take a second and just respond to that poll. Samrat, if as we close, if there's one or two pro tips that you can provide and share with the audience here today. We talked a lot about personalization, context, as well as experience. How would you sort of distill it down to one or two takeaways that the brand marketers can start to think about, whether it's campaigns at the end of this year or going into 2022?
So I would say two things that brand marketers should always keep in mind. This is true for all advertising, but I think audio advertising in particular. Integrate, do not interrupt. Audio as a platform is one where people want to connect with themselves and learn more about society. It puts people in a very specific neuro state. And what that means is when you're thinking about playlists, what you're buying against, when you're thinking about the kind of creative that you're making, you have to integrate all this. Think about the mood of the consumer and build your creative that way. So that's one. The second piece is that every audio experience brings with it unique opportunities for your brand. In some cases, it can elevate your brand to higher energy. In some cases, it can provide the equity of support. Look at those things very carefully and develop a strategy for audio not, I wouldn't say in isolation, but at least in a much bigger and holistic way than thinking of it as a support function.
Samrat, thank you. Thank you for sharing insights on the research, plus your experience as a brand marketer. For all the questions that came in the chat box that we didn't get to, someone from the Spotify team will respond to you directly and answer all the questions you have there. And then lastly, because no Spotify event is complete without some music, we're delighted to be joined by the incredible Rina Sawayama for an exclusive musical performance. With over 200 million plays across streaming services of her critically acclaimed debut album, Sawayama, listed in over 50 Album of the Year lists in 2020, she's been hailed as the future of pop. Rina, take it away.